mental strength is built the same way that physical strength is built. We have different muscles that we have to train and strengthen over time. And the only way you can do that is with reps and additional resilience and harder challenges, more weight. We have ad nauseum resources and education online and trainers and gyms and all the things about different ways that we can either look strong or actually be strong. And we don't have the same comparable things for our mental strength, our emotional strength. And yet those are far more important. If you think about how much time people spend in a gym and training to the depths that they train, in terms of functional application, like where that level of strength, especially for those who are training very seriously to like build their muscles, aside from physical attractiveness or a certain sense of physical like confidence, right, which is really important. But if you think about how much we actually need to use, or in what situations in this current modern world we actually need to be that physically strong, there aren't that many unless you're in a profession that literally requires physical strength, or you compete or do other things that require that kind of strength. But we'll put in hours every single day, some people, or multiple times a week, to at least look or feel strong, even though most of us don't need that level of strength applied in our day-to-day lives to live well. But mental strength we actually need every single day, because that influences how we communicate, how we make decisions, how we relate to other people, how we express ourselves and present ourselves, how, like, even what we choose to share about ourselves, how secure we feel, how strong we feel in the person that we are, how confident we feel in what we present and communicate to the world. Like, it affects everything that we do. And it affects work. It affects every setting that we're in. Home, friendships, romantic partnerships, like family, like everything. And also it affects our physical performance as well, because so much of it is the mental game, right? How many athletes talk about the fact that it's a mental game? And yet, unless you're a pro athlete and you have literally like a psych coach of some kind or someone working with you, like, there are a few ways in which we're building our mental muscles in the way that we think about building our physical ones. And the authenticity to be our honest selves at any time with any person in any setting requires mental strength. It requires the freedom to be ourselves. And the thing I would add about freedom, because I think about it not only as mental strength, but more specifically mental freedom, strength of which is a component. But there are ways in which when we are physically strong, we feel more liberated to do certain activities, right? Like a lot of people who, as they get older and they feel kind of more fragile, strength training, going to the gym, conditioning, all those things make them feel stronger and more equipped to do daily things in their lives. And it could be something as simple as like gardening, right? Or playing with their kids or grandkids or whatever it may be. But if we think about where the actual application of our mental strength goes, it isn't divorced from how free we feel to actually be ourselves. Whereas physical strength, the freedom is the limitations of your physical body, right? And if you feel stronger in it, you then feel like you're able to physically do more. So the concept applies. However, what physical restrictions don't do, or the lack of physical strength doesn't do, it doesn't run and create its own narrative, whereas our thoughts do, right? Even if we are physically limited, what creates a narrative about how strong we are, how capable we are, is still our thoughts. And so, short of our physical body no longer working, our physical limitations don't actually trap us in our body unless our brain tells us some story that we are trapped in this body, right? And the distinction I draw is thinking about all the people who have been physically disabled in some way. Some either they were born that way, had some accident, lost a leg, went to war, whatever it may be. But we have the entire Paralympics, right, for people who are differently abled than a full functioning body. But our physical limitations aren't actually the things that trap us. It's our mental limitations, right? And the stories that we spin. And so now you think about a fully abled person who has all their full motor function. What they feel they are capable of doing and not capable of doing is entirely driven by our thoughts. And certainly there are some physical limitations that you can train to overcome. But ultimately, why, to me, mental freedom is the goal, not just mental strength, is because as you build the muscles of mental strength, you also need to liberate yourself from the narratives that you've spun about what you are capable of, what your limitations are, what you doubt about yourself, what you don't think you can achieve, your likelihood of failure, all of those things. Because every single thing in life requires, every single thing we want to attain, create in life has some risk. And currently our world is increasingly emphasizing convenience and comfort above all, because that's what sells, right? And we find more ways to sell shit to each other. And as we get more and more accustomed to everything feeling convenient and comfortable, we want to take less risk because it is uncomfortable. But because we're primed, we're constantly being fed this narrative that we need to feel comfortable and things need to be convenient. But most things that we want in life that require effort and energy and sacrifice are going to be uncomfortable. And if we don't build the mental fortitude to be as strong as we physically are building ourselves to be, then ultimately our physical limitations are going to be restricted by this still. So brute strength, both physically, but also mental strength is not enough unless you couple that with also building the state of being where you are free to think what you think, to express what you want to express, to do what you want to do, and believe that you can achieve whatever it is you want to achieve. And the thing with building mental strength is that philosophically, it's no different than physical training. You have to get the reps in, and you have to do harder and harder things to give your body, brain, the friction to build new skills. In the same way that you add weight over time, you also have to add harder tasks over time. So depending on where we feel like we are not mentally strong, we start small in the same way that you start small with physical training. You don't, as the cliche goes, you don't run a marathon in a day, right? You don't suddenly go from not being able to run to suddenly running a marathon. You have to start with going around the block, twice around the block, half a mile, 1 mile, so on and so forth. But with our mental strength, we actually have, unless we are putting ourselves in situations or actively thinking about how we can train these muscles, a lot of our world is going to default to comfort and safety. And our brains are wired to default to comfort and safety because it's trying to keep us alive and keep us safe. But we have to constantly choose to step outside of that. And it's not just stepping outside of your comfort zone. I think that notion is limited in actually describing what the work entails. It's expanding your comfort zone. Mental strength comes from being in more and more uncomfortable situations where you then build your comfort with the discomfort of those situations. For some people, that may be as simple as asking for help. Many of us are terrible at asking for help. And if we are in a bind and in a really rough spot and going through really hard shit, that's not the time to try and build the skill because we've been so conditioned to not ask for help. The time to build the skill is when you don't need the help. But if you know that you have a hard time asking for help, you can give yourself little exercises. Every single day, find a way to ask for help. Simple things like directions, like water when you don't need water, right? Like bothering someone, because a lot of us who have a hard time asking for help feel like we're a bother. We don't want to be a nuisance. We don't want to, inconvenience someone, because likely at some point we were made to feel like we were inconveniencing someone, or a nuisance, or annoying for asking for what we needed. And so in low stakes environments, asking for that. Or if something is unclear, asking a clarifying question. If someone said something in a meeting, in a conversation you don't understand, be like, hey, sorry, like interrupting for a moment, can you explain that further? It can come in the tiniest of ways, or even at a coffee shop. If you want a little bit more milk, ask them for a little bit more milk. Or if you want a cup of ice on the side, ask for a cup of ice. Like, for each person, you're going to have to figure out the activities for yourself, because every single area that we want to build mental strength is going to be different. But think about the things that make you uncomfortable, and think about where that is most affecting your life, where it's limiting you, and start there. Because then we get to actually improve. In the same way that oftentimes people go to a gym with the specific problem area they're trying to fix, right? I say this because most people don't actually have problem areas, like their bodies are fine. But you might just want something to be different, right? You're like, okay, my core is weak. I want to work on my core. You've identified to, someone at the gym who can help you to say, okay, here's what you can do to strengthen your core, right? Or I'm trying to, run faster. Okay, here's some things you can do. But first we have to identify where we think we're mentally weak and figure out how we can train and fit and build, habits and practices into our everyday to get the reps. Because if we don't actually create those situations, you can't get the reps. And the thing with mental training is that oftentimes, because if we just let our brains run the way it's already programmed, it's gonna lean into the ways that it's already attuned itself to make it as easy as possible. And so we have to actively add friction. I find ways to actively add friction to my life all the time. And it's again, little things, whether it's taking a different route, right? Walking an extra block, to ensure that I don't stay in kind of the same pathway every day, both physical and mental, switching things up, even if it's inconvenient, right? Or shopping at the local mom and pop, because my principle is to support small business. A principle in his mind is to support the little guy, the underdog, the small business, right? And even if it's going to cost me a little bit more, it's going to be a little bit more inconvenient because I may not find it at the first shop that I go to. I make sure that anything I look for, I try and shop at a mom and pop. And that causes tons of friction in my life. But in the grand scheme of things, it's nothing at all, right? It's a few extra minutes, a few extra blocks, maybe a few extra dollars that I can afford to spend on bigger things. I might not do that, right? Because I can't afford to spend the same. But for every single one of us, we have to figure out how to attune our brains to the kinds of friction that we need that'll build our mental strength. Because as you build your mental strength, what it will allow you to start to do is be more free to act outside of your existing comfort zone, because you're expanding it. And that will only open the world up to more opportunities for you to speak to more people, because you're not afraid of inconveniencing people and asking them questions, to be more curious about the world around us, to feel more capable of taking risks that maybe you've wanted to take for a really long time. Whether it's to change that job, whether it's to leave that relationship, whether it's to ask someone out, whether it's to, build a new skill, like go skydiving that you've never done before, or go on a solo trip that you've always wanted to do. Whatever it may be, we have to cultivate the mental environment that will allow us to make decisions, to build skills, to act in a way that is much more aligned to the person that we are. And with that comes the freedom, because you feel more secure, because you feel more safe in expanding your comforts. As you expand your comfort zone, you will feel more free, because you know how to secure yourself, not just physically now, but mentally. And because you feel more secure and you feel safe and you feel, to a degree, more loved by yourself, you will take more risks to do more of the things, to say more of the things, to have the hard conversation, to tell your parents something you've never told them, to say to a partner something you've always wanted to say, to make a request of a friend that you've always been afraid to make. Whatever it may be, the freedom comes with building the secure foundation where we feel strong and we feel safe to be ourselves, to speak as ourselves, to express, to ask, to debate, to converse, to even choose, make choices that are much more aligned with you, to say no to things you don't want to do, to tell someone when you feel uncomfortable with something that they've said, to not only then stand up for you, but to stand up for other people as you see people in situations in which they might need someone to help them feel more safe and secure. Because our physical strength, our mental strength should be used to benefit not only ourselves, but the people around us. For us to feel like we can support each other. Because if we feel safe in ourselves, we will feel far more grounded in the people that we are and far more generous to help other people around us. And our world right now is so seized by this notion that we can't be okay, like that we're not okay, that we are constantly in this state of anxiety because of all the shit that's happening in the world. When actually most of us are really fucking okay compared to what's actually happening in the atrocities in the world. Most of us are really, really solid, but we don't feel that way. And in order for us to start to make choices that align us to who we actually are, to do work that we actually find to be meaningful and valuable, to be in relationships with people that love and support us for the people that we are and not who they want us to be or who they think we are, to align our money and our spending and our choices, financial ones, to things that actually matter. Like that requires us to be mentally strong and mentally free to actually express and be the people that we are, and trust the intuition that exists within every single one of us and the wisdom that exists within all of us. Because at the end of the day, the disconnect that we feel from the lives that we live start first and foremost with how disconnected we feel with ourselves. And in the same way that when we go to the gym and do a hard thing and it's painful and it's hard and we feel like we can't do it, afterwards you have this incredible feeling of like accomplishment, or at minimum of accountability that you went and did the thing. But during, it's uncomfortable and it hurts. This will be no different. Like building our mental muscles is no different. It will be uncomfortable. You will feel like you're crawling out of your skin because you're likely going to do something that you've been habituated to do differently your entire life. And now you're suddenly going to change it. And your body's going to be like, what the fuck are you doing? We don't do this because this is so uncomfortable. We already know a different way. But if you want to actually expand your comfort zone so you can do harder shit, that's what we have to do. And that is in all realms of life. Because so many people will talk about kind of mental toughness when it comes to physical activities, or mental toughness when it comes to building businesses, but not in other realms. What about mental toughness when it comes to your marriage? What about mental toughness when it comes to your parents and your siblings and your family relationships and dynamics? What about when it comes to managing your money and talking about money with your loved ones? What about when it comes to like choosing things that you want, not just going along with everyone else? When it comes to just sharing your opinion, your conversations? What about speaking up at work, right? Like, these are all the areas in which mental strength and us being free to express ourselves ultimately impact our lives. And the more you are you in all of these different facets, the more all of it aligns, the more all of it is integrated, so that you get to just be you at all times, in any setting, with any person. So figure out what you want to go to the gym for, your mental gym. Figure out what mental training you want to undergo. Figure out what area of your life are you not feeling mentally resilient, where you feel that there is something holding you back in your head, in your thoughts. And what are low stakes ways that you can start to build that? So if it's self-doubt, where can you start to build self-trust? In the little things. What do you currently doubt yourself on that's really small? Start there. If it's imposter syndrome, where do you feel secure? Where do you feel like you're not an imposter? And you know what that feels like. So in the thing that you're trying to do where you feel like an imposter, how do you start to build the skill and the relationship with the thing you're trying to do that gets you the same feeling when you're not feeling like an imposter? Because you know what that feels like. If it's speaking up, sharing your thoughts, speaking your mind, and you're constantly currently being either spoken over or disregarded, don't start with that relationship. Start in a place where you're welcome, where people want to hear your opinion, and just start sharing it more. Like, these are the little trainings we have to come up with for ourselves, because we have to create our own mental gym so that we can build the mental strength, so that we can ultimately be mentally free. Because that affects everything that we do. And that affects, at the core, how much we allow ourselves to be our true selves.